Everyone, please help me welcome new author Jessica Boots to the Heal with Kat podcast. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, congratulations on the new release. I think it came out in August, right? August 11th. Your book came out and it's called It's All Connected. It's about leadership, creativity, purpose, and the chakras. And for those who are listening to the Heal with Kat podcast, you know we love to talk about this topic. I have actually an interesting, I was telling you before we recorded, but for the listener, I have an interesting perspective on today's interview questions. I would love for you to take us through each and every chakra. And I have a specific question about each one when it relates to creativity, purpose, confidence, love, truth, intuition, and connection. I think that's going to be the best way for our listeners to understand your perspective, your wisdom, your knowledge, but also how they can get a little dip in the toe of your book so they can keep reading if they're interested as we go.
That sounds perfect.
Tell us a little bit about you and how you came to write this book, and then we'll get into those deeper questions.
Yeah, love it. So happy to be here. A little bit about me. I am located in Oakland, California. I am a mom. That feels like a super important part of my identity. I have a kindergartner this year. And I also bring her up because my journey to motherhood was this big pivot in my life and opportunities for healing. So really that turn in my life when I became a mom really shaped so much of, the catalyst for the book, the healing and the leadership. But before that, I was an educator for many years. So I taught elementary and middle school and was a instructional lead, school leader in the middle school setting, and experienced some loss on my way to pregnancy. I had two miscarriages,
Mm.
and it just kind of took my life and flipped it upside down. And I decided to take a break from the path that I was on to heal. And after I'd made that decision, I was pregnant with my daughter, and her birth was basically just a couple months ahead of the pandemic. And then I had all the space I could possibly, it's like careful what you wish for type energy. But it was also really beautiful. So, in that, I don't know, looking back, it was such a sacred couple of years when she was really young. And I had the opportunity to really sit with, like, who do I want to be? Like, who am I now? Right. Given all of my life experiences. And some of my teachers who have come my way in the yoga practice and through reading and through online study, the chakras was a main pathway for healing for me personally. It helped me get out of my mind and into my body.
Mm.
So some of, experienced loss as a child, and then the loss of miscarriage, and just the work of being a human in life. um, a lot of it can feel like we try to think our way through things. And for me, the chakras was such an embodied path of healing. So when I started my new business and have found my way into offering spaces for healing and leadership, now it just really fell into place to write the book. It brings in my educator background, it brings in my yoga teacher perspective and own personal stories, and a lot of my coaching work. It's really almost designed as if I were to sit down and have a coaching conversation with someone where I'm like, okay, go try this thing and then report back and, like, let's see how it goes. But yeah, that's both a lot and a little bit of what brought me to writing it.
Well, we have a lot of moms in the community, so I think a lot of mothers are going to resonate with your story and the journey that you go on. And I'm so sorry to hear about the loss, but I am happy to hear that you got your daughter and she's in your life and you get to now celebrate this gift of life that was given. And now it's almost, it sounds like as you birthed your daughter, this book was birthed with it at the same time. And I think that creation energy is just so potent, so potent.
Yeah, it really is. I teach several yoga classes a week, and a couple of them are the prenatal and mom and baby classes. And so I'm in that cycle of birth with all of those moms. And yeah, I have 1,000 ways to also make an analogy of like the book and birth. And but so much of it, I think, really what ties all of those experiences together is this invitation to sort of re-examine our identity. Like, who am I? Who am I now? Right? Given what happened yesterday, given what happened last year, experience or this experience, like, who am I now, and who do I want to be?
I love that you view it through the chakras because the chakras do hold so much of our identity, past, present, and even future. And there's so much information with the chakras. And so I love that you've now kind of viewed identity through things like purpose, creativity, confidence, love, truth, intuition, and connection. And so I would love to start with the root chakra and really dive into that one, leading with purpose. How do you personally ground yourself in purpose, especially when life or leadership feels unstable?
Slowing down. Uh,
Preach, say more.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, it's one of those many reminders that I have. I have a huge whiteboard in my room, and it's like one of the things, it's okay to slow down.
Yes.
Because oh my gosh, I feel like I need it every single day, that reminder. And I think the root chakra is that reminder, right? It's the each of the chakras has an element, right? And so the element associated with the root is earth.
Mm,
So it's like, oh, even just saying it, right? It's like that cooling, grounding, slowing down.
mhm.
For me, on like a very, like, what do I literally do? I literally go outside my house and walk on the trail that is surrounded by redwood trees. And I look at those big trees and I'm reminded that time is so much bigger than this little moment that I'm struggling with, right? Like, these trees are hundreds of years old. That aspect of nature, the like grounding through walking or running or being outside in nature, and then just looking at it, right? Looking at the rocks and the trees is a way that helps my perspective slow down. And then being in nature helps our nervous system slow down too.
Well, and I think on that note as well, trauma really disconnects our head from our bodies. And so, and because trauma can feel so confusing or shocking or disorienting or just disappointing, and not having the tools to be able to ground into our feelings around certain things with trauma, the ability to bring that back together through the root and to ground into the earth through your body, through nature, those are really ways that people can lead with purpose and lead with a clarity of mind rather and a clarity of their feelings rather than moving from a very disoriented place, which I think a lot of I feel like there's like a stereotype with a lot of leaders that you have to hustle and push and challenge people. And yes, there is a little bit of that, but to what extent and what cost? And sometimes I feel like I've seen a lot of CEOs or leadership come from a place of like trauma rather than a place of like grounded clarity. And there's not always that sense of like when they walk into the room, you trust their leadership and you trust that they're in their purpose. It feels a little scattered.
Yeah. Yeah. And, each of the chakras, as you know, has a shadow side, and the shadow of the root is fear. And the slowing down is such a simple thing to say, but it is often so uncomfortable at first. And, I mentioned that the pandemic, when my daughter was a couple months old, was this massive slowdown. And my father passed away when I was 3.
Mm.
And so dealing with that, like, it's almost like revisiting that trauma as a parent with a young child was just so enlightening, right? I was like, oh, I have such a scarcity mindset. Oh, it's really hard for me to slow down. It's really hard for me to grapple with some of those big questions around like worthiness and enoughness, right? Some of these very basic survival. Do I have the things I need? Is like such root chakra energy. Do I
Yeah.
have the people and the resources, the finances, like all of those things that build our foundation? And also, what do I want to do with my time here? So, like in the leadership aspect, knowing our values, knowing our, yeah, like what is our purpose? Like, what are we meant to do here? Like, all of that. Those are big questions that sometimes we're like, I don't have time to do that. But the slowing down can help facilitate. And it really is the foundation that then all of the other themes build upon.
And in that fashion, let's move to the sacral chakra because I love starting with the root. Like whenever I did Reiki for people, when I went through my training, I was trained to start from the crown and go down. But then I was working with a teacher who worked from the root up. And I loved that perspective because I thought that, okay, I get the grounding and then I can feel safe to go from there up into, the crown and all of that. So moving on to the sacral, you talk about leading with creativity. And for a lot of people, especially in leadership roles, if we're going to kind of talk about that perspective, I think that there's a lot of a curiosity around how do I get to be a leader and be creative? And sometimes it can feel a little elusive. And so, what are some of the ways that you invite more play and
Mhm.
creative flow into your work and into your daily life? And how would you suggest that leaders do that as well?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think in a very practical, like what could leaders do? I think it's being flexible, right? Flexible with your methodologies, flexible with your time, flexible with your location. So thinking about whatever it is that you're going to do, right? If you're going to write the book, you're going to plan a team meeting, you're going to, plan this project. Some of it is just changing where we are. Like, oh, let's take this meeting outside, or let's literally play a game, right? Like, let's like throw something around. Let's get big paper and put our ideas here, doing something that is helps us get into a state of flow, right? The theme here is water. And so it's finding a sense of flow and joy and play. But as a leader in a school, we would often, spend those minutes of like, okay, we're going to go outside and, play this sort of silly game that gets everyone laughing and joyful, which lights up our brain in the way of thinking differently rather than, okay, let's get our paper and just write things down. And so it's almost like remembering, like, okay, what would 7-year-old me want to do? And inviting some of that silliness to come in and then just letting all ideas be okay, knowing that you can edit from there.
It reminds me of that story where Steve Jobs used to take people on meetings outside and walk around campus, and that makes me, again, going back to that connecting the mind and the body together and really leading from that place of like groundedness, being able to let the body and the mind work together with someone else on like a walk feels like a really great way to let the creative juices flow. If you're not somebody who likes to play or being creative isn't really like a strength of yours. I like that you said, getting out in nature. I know you said it for the root chakra too, but like getting out and moving your body with the creativity, I think that's such a huge component to it. And as women, with family constellation therapy, I'm constantly reminding women like reconnect with this part of yourself, your femininity, your divine intuition, your ability to bring play and sensuality into life and to reconnect to pleasure because these are the things that really open you up to creating these ideas or dreaming up what something, might be able to look like in order for it to feel fulfilling in your life.
Yeah, I think one of the affirmations, there's affirmations in each chapter. For the sacral chakra, so much of it is about deserving. Like I deserve, right? I deserve to play. I deserve to have fun. I deserve to put my creative expressions out into the world. Whereas, yeah, the root is really like, what do I need?
Mm.
And then it's this invitation, what do I want? Like, what do I want? And just allowing so much for women, right? Like it's getting over that shadow here, which is guilt, like, and just saying, yeah, I want that. I want it to be fun.
And on that, so the root is I need, the sacral is I want, but you can't want without having that safety and stability first. But then we have the solar plexus, which I believe it to be like I trust or I act, like I exude, I express maybe. But you talk a lot about leading with confidence here in the solar plexus chakra. And I think many leaders struggle with self-doubt and that inner voice, that inner critic in their head that may be the voice of mom or dad or a teacher or a coach or something. And I think we all struggle with that. I think imposter syndrome is like more common than we even want care to admit sometimes, especially in leadership, because a lot of us are learning through the experience of leading. So, what practices have helped you strengthen your confidence and a sense of personal power with yourself?
Well, just listening to your reflections on that, I was just smiling to myself because there's little exercises in there touching on so much of what you just said.
Oh, how
Like
funny.
there's an exercise in the book that's about your inner best friend and your inner critic, right? So like that to me is one incredibly tangible and really powerful tool. It's just getting to know those voices, right? Identifying what your inner best friend sounds like and your inner critic and when they show up. And another aspect of what you said that just sparked for me is, to me, what I really feel builds confidence is being in the cycle of learning. So, like you mentioned, right, the experiences that we have help build our confidence. And sometimes what happens with so many of the leaders that I coach, they find themselves in a brand new leadership position. And then all of a sudden it feels like, well, who am I to be doing this? I'm so underqualified, blah, blah, blah. It's like we, for a minute, forget everything we've done before. So part of the practice is looking back on all of those life experiences, knowing our strengths, right? Pulling the strengths from those experiences. Oh yeah, this is what I learned. Oh right, I had this transferable skill, this transferable strength, and bringing them to the current moment and remembering how those didn't used to be there, right? At some point, they had to learn, or I had to learn, or you had to learn that particular skill or that particular strength. But we sort of go through these cycles of learning that once we are an expert at something, it's often very easy to forget what it was like to be a novice. And when we're a novice, it's like we just like totally forget all the other things that we learned prior. So a lot of it, I think, is some reflection exercises, right? Doing some introspective work. The solar plexus is all about our relationship with our own identity, that self worth, self confidence. And so it's figuring out, like, oh, right, where have I been? What are the experiences that I've already digested? And let me pull those and take them with me into this next chapter.
I love that so much because I even for myself sometimes, I mean, I don't manage a team, but I own my own business. And sometimes I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, no, you do. And even if you didn't know, you have other people you can lean on, but you can trust that you've dealt with similar things before, that you have the confidence to know how to address this issue or address this thing. And I think, yeah, there's so much pressure sometimes with roles in leadership. We got to perform or got to make sure that I look or come off a certain way so that I have it all together. And it's like, actually, like most of us don't know what the hell we're doing. And we're just figuring it out and we make mistakes and we're learning to grow. And so I love what you said about that, just kind of reflecting back on, hey, you can navigate this and here are all the reasons how proof that you can. Yeah, beautiful. Well, let's move on to my favorite chakra, the heart chakra. I love the heart chakra so much. Leading with love. I just got goosebumps when I read it out loud. I think this is something that collectively our planet needs more of. We are so not leading from love right now in so many ways. And so, I think a lot of people in leadership, they feel that they have to be the, stern soldier or the dictator or somebody that lays down the law. And there's a way to do that in leadership, I think, that also incorporates compassion and love and understanding and yet also navigating setting boundaries and making tough decisions. So, how do you balance something like compassion and love and leadership while also laying down the law, setting boundaries, and making tough decisions? Hey everyone, Kat popping in during the episode today to share that I have something so exciting to announce. I just launched a brand new series of meditations on Insight Timer, the world's #1 meditation app with over 31 million users. I'll be releasing 10 new meditations every month now through August. And the best part? They're totally free, including downloading the app. The guided meditations on Insight Timer aren't just about ancestral healing. They're designed to help you understand how inherited patterns, pain, fears, or choices show up in your everyday life, your relationships, your self worth, parenting experiences, or even your health. Each one gently helps you untangle those threads so you can move forward feeling more grounded, clear, and connected. Just download the Insight Timer app, search my name, Kat Dow, or click the link in the show notes below. Make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter to get updates every month on the new meditations coming to your phone soon. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this, because it's at the center, right? There's three below and three above. It, to me, is the center where we see how needed all of the other aspects are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think when a leader is clear on their purpose, when they have that foundation, they know their values, they know, well, this is our mission, right? This is the way that we're going, this is our why. It makes everything else easier. So if you are the leader of a team and you're like, well, I know that our values are around sustainability and inclusion, right? And efficiency or whatever it is, that clarity helps making decisions so much easier. And the compassion and the love, I mean, it just spreads out into all of these other aspects of how we show up. It's generosity, it's leading with gratitude, right? So in your meetings, either with your team or one on one, or as you partner with others, recognizing what's already here, like seeing how abundant things are and expressing gratitude, leading with vulnerability. So when we show up in a way that we are human, we have emotions, we have things we care about, and we sort of offer that to others, people can feel that, right? And when we offer some gratitude for others, people relax their shoulders, like they feel seen and heard and loved in like a human way. They're like, oh, I matter here.
Yeah.
Right. And it's become so much easier to work together when we're aligned in our values and our mission. And I also feel like appreciated for who I am and how I contribute.
And what if we're not aligned with someone that we're working with in our values? How do we lead from the heart when we're dealing with people who are not in the same energetic alignment or even just value or moral based alignment that we are?
Yeah. So one of the like exercises that I have in the book is around taking the most generous interpretation of an event. And it's not always easy. And it often is, I would say, the most beneficial for ourselves, right? So if I'm feeling frustration about XYZ and I make an assumption about someone, I'm already going to go into that moment feeling kind of resentful, maybe short tempered. And if I take a moment and consider, well, what's the most generous interpretation, right? Maybe it's not true, right? Maybe this person is a total jerk and they're doing it to spite me and blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's true. Allow myself that. But if I almost give them more compassion than I even think they deserve, what might shift in how I show up?
Mm.
And if I show up more generous and more compassionate, then maybe there's like a little opening for them to show up a little bit more generous and compassion, right? That whole saying, right, of like hurt people, but healed people heal people.
Mm.
And it's definitely not easy, but I have to hope, right?
It's well, and then what I hear you saying is it's just taking self-responsibility for our response rather than our reaction. And there is a lot of hard acceptance that comes with seeing people for who they're showing us to be rather than who we want to believe. But there is something to be said for that generous interpretation or that compassion and understanding and acceptance of like, maybe there's just something else going on and I have to trust that like that's the case here, you know? So relationships can be the toughest thing of all kind, but I do love that perspective on it because then like you said, it frees you from holding on to that like oh my God, or the anger or the pain around it.
Yeah. And but, and then to just make another connection, like here, this goes into the sacral chakra, which boundaries are such an important part there, right? So it's the both and. Like we can say, here's the most generous interpretation. I am going to show up as kind. I am going to show up as respectful. And I'm not going to let you treat me poorly, right? So maybe this isn't the place I'm going to work, or maybe this isn't you know, when this happens, this is my response. So I think it's both parts of it.
I love that. I think that's so beautiful, and it really, like you said, it really softens the heart. And as we connect to our truth, and as we connect to our hearts, then we learn how to speak from a place of truth rather than from a place of wounded ego or lack of generous interpretation or reaction. And so when we're leading from truth, that means speaking up authentically. And that can be really challenging, especially when we have wounds around authenticity and connection and being seen and heard and loved for who we are, as we're also trying to figure out who that is. Can you share a time where leading with truth for you and using these principles that you write about transformed a situation or a relationship? Because I really think that those real-time experiences for people can help them envision, hey, I can also do this too.
I mean, so I mentioned that one of the aspects of my work is teaching yoga. And in the prenatal classes and the mom and baby classes, we always start with meditation and then we do a check in.
Mm.
One of my favorite parts of that class compared to like the vinyasa classes that I teach. So we are in a circle, and it's a moment where everybody has the opportunity to just share authentically, like how they are. And so every single week, multiple times, I have these moments where I really have like the opportunity, but also the challenge, I think, of here I am as the space holder to either be like, here I am, I've got it all figured out, or I can also then make myself part of the circle and share what's really real for me sometimes, and kind of risk like, oh, is this going to be too vulnerable? Like,
Mhm.
did I share, like, is it okay that I let my emotion come through? And I've learned time and time again that that vulnerability, that speaking about what's true for me, is such a gift. And it just opens up the space and takes people from this surface level moment into, oh, it's okay for me to share my heart. It's okay for me to say that this is hard. It's
Mhm.
okay for me to say I don't know about this, or like it's okay for me to say I don't like being pregnant. It's okay for me to say that like I'm grieving, you know. Um and so I feel like it's like a micro moment answer to your question, but it feels the most real to me is that I have the opportunity as a leader in that very like safe space every week to say, okay, what's true? What's not just like my knee jerk response, but what feels true for me today as a human, as a mother, as a yoga practitioner, like what feels joyful, what feels hard, what feels real.
And I'm sitting with my own reflection of moments where I've had to lead and I'm not doing well. And I didn't feel that I had the vulnerability or the space to say, I'm not doing okay today. And I don't have the capacity to show up. And I think about all of the corporate women and men who are expected to show up every day, 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, no matter what, when they have families and friends and lives and personal situations that they're going through, and they don't have the ability or they have the pressure of saying, I literally my paycheck. And so, how would you help somebody who's in that position? How would you encourage them to speak their truth and not have to compromise their basic needs or their expectations in a job? Or maybe you would tell them to navigate those differently.
Yeah, I mean, annoyingly, I would say it depends.
Yeah, obviously,
Um,
yeah.
but I would say that our bodies want to get that out in
Mm.
some way. And it's absolutely true that it is not always appropriate in certain settings with certain people with certain topics. But when I think about expressing ourselves, one of the things I would coach a lot of principals, right, who very much hold the space in their school. And so two tools that I often offer to them are their phones. They're like turn on their go for a 10-minute walk and talk into your phone and then just delete it.
Yeah.
And journaling, right? Journaling too, but the talking into the phone, just recording it and then deleting it after feels so much easier for some of them than picking up a pen and a paper and like actually saying like I have time for this right now. There is something so healing about writing, but sometimes we just need something fast.
Love that.
I'm so upset about this and this is why
Yeah.
and then just like clear.
Love it. All my corporate girlies who are listening, open up that recording app on your phone, let it out. Don't hold it in. The the beauty about as we get higher into the chakras is that we're getting more and more connected to the higher self, the truest, truest, truest version of us. And what I love about intuition is that so many people, I mean, I work as an intuitive medium, and so many people are like, I could never do what you do. And I'm like, You absolutely can. I am not any more special than anybody else. I just one was born with it, the muscle a little bit stronger, and then I actively practice that muscle every single day. So, yeah, if you go and do leg day every day, you're going to be able to like leg press way more than what I can leg press. But I want to talk a little bit about how that ability to be intuitive is accessible to everyone. And yet, it's so undervalued in leadership. It's almost sometimes looked down upon in leadership and certain kinds of leadership. How would you suggest, rather, and even if for yourself, integrating that inner knowing when making decisions of all kinds, and valuing that part of us that we all carry, knowing that the people you're leading are also in tune with something like intuition?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, it goes back to the beginning. I think for me, how I best access my intuition is by slowing down and getting quiet. Nature then like speeds it up, right? It's just like, oh, okay, here we are. Let's get all the downloads. And the real challenge in accessing intuition, I find for a lot of leaders, is that they're in places and spaces where everything goes so fast.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is that there are expectations. Sometimes the expectations are very, very clear, right? Like you need to make this decision by this timeline. But I think that there's a lot of times where those expectations are kind of internal. Like we think that being a good leader means answering on the spot. We think that being a good leader means responding to the email with the answer fully fleshed out. When in fact, it's okay to say, that's a wonderful question. I will get back to you tomorrow. And allowing some more pockets of time to let yourself go inward in whatever way you access your intuition best, whether it's like, I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk outside and like ponder this thing, whatever it is, that gets again out of our mind and into our body, which then our whole intuitive ecosystem really can speak up. It's allowing some and protecting our time to just be with ourselves and listen for that intuition. And so I think that there's a lot more agency than that people have than
Mhm.
we often realize, right? When people say, oh, people expect this of me. But if you were to say, I want to think about that for 30 minutes so that I can give you a really thoughtful response, people probably say, okay.
Yeah. And we don't know if we don't ask for it. Yeah. And lastly, the crown chakra, leading with connection. And, not all leaders have spiritual practices, but leaders do have rituals and traditions and things that they will ground into in order for them to feel like they're showing up as the best leader, whether it's making their ritual morning coffee and, journaling, or maybe it's going on a walk or whatever it is. But when we're talking about this higher connection to the higher self, In what ways do you see leadership as a spiritual practice itself? And how do you stay connected to something greater than yourself in something like a corporate job or a mundane, maybe managerial day to day, but you are leading people?
In this particular chapter, I talk both about the spiritual aspect, and then I also allow some space for people who are like, I don't want to go there.
Okay. Yeah.
And so my invitation, I'll kind of answer it both ways, but I think there's an opportunity for people to engage with this energy center and this theme of leading with connection with being able to really see the big picture, right? To be spacious enough in your thinking that you can recognize like how you fit into the larger organization, how you can see the shared humanity, your boss to the people that you manage. It's allowing for, yeah, our oneness, our connectedness to show up is, I think, a really beneficial way that you can approach that without even saying spiritual.
Yes, I love that. I honestly think that is such an emotionally mature way of approaching leadership without it being woo.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if you're here for the woo, me too. I think to me, this is where it goes all the way back down to the bottom, right? So like if we know our purpose, then we're like, well, I'm here in this lifetime, right? I'm sort of like chosen in a way to be divinely guided, right? That like I can approach everything I do with some sacredness, whether it's a podcast or it's writing a book or it's parenting or doing folding the laundry or making this meal for my family or making a, PowerPoint presentation or like whatever it is. I think it really is an invitation to ask yourself, am I spending my time and energy and attention in a way that feels purposeful and sacred? And is this what I want to do with my time here? I think sometimes we experience burnout because we have too much on our plate, but sometimes it's because we're like, oh, I'm not doing what I'm meant to do. Or I'm doing an element of what I'm meant to do, but my life has shifted, right? Like I've always been a teacher in some capacity, but I've reached a point where someone could say it's science, right? That it's like I had miscarriages. And also, I think the larger scope of things was like, you're meant to do something else in this next chapter. And so, like, we're just sort of shifting where your time, energy, and attention go. But yeah, finding like a sense of sacred in the mundane.
I love that what I'm hearing too is like this inner knowing of the like outer collective. It's like that connection. I feel like the crown is like you know you, but you also know your connection to others. And now it's the need, the want, the trusting, the feeling, the speaking, the seeing. It's the all, and it all leads up to this is what the human collective experience is, and you're one beautiful piece of this collective experience. And I love the woo personally. But for the people who aren't into the woo, I just love that perspective, and I might borrow that and quote you for it later because my work is interesting. Some people are very woo, and some people are like, eh. And I'm like, okay, we got to find some other ways to talk about this stuff so it lands for everybody. Jessica, this has been such a gift to just dip our toe into your book, It's All Connected, and to really understand how to lead in life. I know we talked a lot about the corporate world and a lot about like traditional leadership. And that's mainly because a lot of the girls and the women that are in my community are somewhat in the corporate and the woo at the same time. So I really appreciate you speaking to that. But there's so much more leadership that's out there where your values and what you write about can really land for people. So let us know where people can buy the book, how they can get their hands on it, and also how people can connect with you as well.
I will. And she's so pretty. So I'm just going to show the cover. So
Yeah,
I have a visual imprint, but it's all connected.
beautiful.
An interactive leadership and healing journey through the chakras. You can get it on Amazon. That's super easy. It's on Bookshop. And if you're in the Bay Area, it's also in like lots of small local bookstores. And if you go to my Instagram, it's at Lead and Be Well, or my website, leadandbewell.com. You can find your way to all the goods.
We'll put all of that in the show notes so people can have a one tap and go experience. Again, thank you so, so much. I am just in honor of the way that you've channeled this book and how it's going to help people. And I can't wait to recommend it to so many. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kat. I really appreciate it.
And guys, if you like this week's episode, don't forget to rate, subscribe, review, and share it with someone who would benefit from hearing this week's chat. And we'll see you next week on the Heal with Cat podcast. Thanks, guys.